Hi there, and welcome back to the garden. I'm Eleanor. Before we begin, tell me down in the comments, what does your front yard look like right now this time of year? Be honest. Is it still holding on to a little color, or has it already gone quiet and brown, waiting out the weeks until spring? I ask because I have a soft spot for this exact question, and today's video is my answer to it. Here's something I think gets overlooked far too often in gardening. We plan so carefully for spring and summer, and then, once September arrives, so many of us simply give up on color for the year. The flowers fade, the mums from the grocery store get plunked down for a few weeks and then tossed, and the whole front yard just quietly fades into brown and gray until the following April. But it genuinely does not have to be that way. There is a whole wonderful world of plants that are just getting started exactly when everything else is finishing. Plants that save their very best show for autumn, when we need a little color and cheer more than ever. So today I'm sharing 10 plants that bloom beautifully in fall, extending your gorgeous color right through September, October, and in many climates, well into November, long after your summer garden has said its goodbyes. Some love full sun, some are perfectly happy in shade, and a few of these might be flowers you've genuinely never heard of before, which is part of the fun. And do stay to the very end, because our last plant isn't a flower at all, and it might just become your new favorite fall container trick. So, pour yourself a cup of coffee, get comfortable, and if you love an easy, beautiful yard in every single season, tap that subscribe button. It truly helps this little channel grow. All right. Let's keep the color going all the way through fall. Let's begin with one of the true stars of the fall garden, a plant that seems to bloom with more enthusiasm the cooler the weather gets. Asters. Asters produce masses of daisy-like flowers, most commonly in shades of purple, lavender, and pink, though white varieties exist too, each with a cheerful little golden yellow center. What makes them so precious is their timing. While most perennials are winding down, asters are just hitting their stride, often blooming from September clear into October or even November, depending on your climate. A big drift of asters in full bloom, right as the rest of the garden fades to brown, is a genuinely joyful, unexpected sight. They're also one of the very best late-season nectar sources for pollinators. Bees and butterflies, including monarchs fueling up for their long migration south, rely heavily on asters at exactly this time of year, when so many other nectar sources have already disappeared. Planting asters is a small but real act of support for the pollinators trying to make it through the season. Asters love full sun and average, well-drained soil, and once established, they're wonderfully low maintenance, returning reliably and often spreading into fuller, more generous clumps each year. For your design, plant them in generous drifts toward the middle or front of a bed, where that late burst of purple or pink will really carry the yard once your summer flowers have finished. My tip: in early summer, before flower buds even form, pinch back the growing tips of your asters by about an inch or two. It feels counterintuitive to cut back a plant that hasn't bloomed yet, but this simple step encourages a bushier, more compact plant with far more flower buds come fall, rather than a tall, floppy one with fewer blooms. A true fall workhorse and a pollinator lifeline, asters are the perfect place to start. Now let's add the plant most people already associate with autumn, with number 2. Number 2 is the plant that instantly says fall to nearly everyone, and for very good reason, the chrysanthemum, or mum. Mums produce dense, rounded mounds absolutely covered in flowers, in the warmest, most classic autumn colors imaginable: deep burgundies, burnt oranges, golden yellows, rich reds, and soft, creamy whites. They bloom right through the cooling weather of September and October, often looking their absolute best exactly when frost is just around the corner, which is precisely when you want the most color to counter the fading rest of the garden. Now here's something important to understand, because it affects how you buy and use them. Most mums sold in the fall, at grocery stores and garden centers, are grown specifically as a one-season display and are often treated as disposable annuals. But true garden mums, sometimes labeled hardy mums, or planted early enough in the season to establish strong roots before winter, can absolutely come back as reliable perennials year after year. The trick is either buying them earlier in the growing season, in spring or early summer, so they have time to root in deeply, or choosing varieties specifically labeled for your hardiness zone. They love full sun and well-drained soil, and they're wonderfully easy to care for through their bloom season, needing only occasional water and deadheading to keep looking their best. For your design, mums are absolutely made for containers. A beautiful pair flanking your front door, refreshed each fall, is a classic and easy seasonal update. Or plant them directly in the ground for a fuller, more permanent fall display. My tip: if you'd like your mums to return next year rather than treating them as disposable, plant them in the ground by midsummer at the latest so the roots have time to establish before winter, and leave the dried foliage standing over winter rather than cutting it back, since it helps protect the crown from the cold. Classic, colorful, and the very symbol of fall, mums earn their reputation. Now let's add a native golden beauty that's often unfairly blamed for something it doesn't do, with number 3. Number 3 is a beautiful native plant that deserves so much more credit than it usually gets, largely because of a case of mistaken identity: goldenrod. Let me clear something up right away, because it matters. Goldenrod is very often blamed for causing fall hay fever and allergies, but that's actually a case of guilty by association. The real culprit is ragweed, an unrelated plant that blooms at exactly the same time with small, inconspicuous green flowers that release enormous amounts of wind-borne pollen. Goldenrod's pollen, by contrast, is heavy and sticky, designed to be carried by insects, not the wind, so it very rarely causes allergy symptoms at all. Goldenrod has simply been an innocent bystander for decades, and I think it's high time it got its reputation back. And what a reputation it deserves. Goldenrod produces tall, graceful, feathery plumes of brilliant golden yellow flowers in late summer and fall, glowing beautifully in the autumn light and paired stunningly with the purples of asters nearby. It's an absolute magnet for bees, butterflies, and migrating monarchs, providing crucial late-season nectar at a time when many other food sources have dried up. As a native plant, it's remarkably tough and low maintenance, thriving in full sun and average to poor soil, and tolerating drought once established with real ease. For your design, pair it with asters for that classic, gorgeous purple and gold fall combination, planted toward the back or middle of a sunny border where its height and movement can shine. My tip: choose one of the well-behaved clumping garden varieties like Fireworks or Golden Fleece, rather than the more aggressively spreading wild types, so it stays exactly where you plant it in a home garden setting. Golden, wrongly maligned, and a genuine pollinator lifeline, goldenrod deserves its place in your fall garden. Now let's return to a familiar face with a whole new fall performance, with number 4. Number 4 is a plant some of you may already know, but I want to show you its true fall glory, because this is really where it shines. Sedum, most famously the variety called Autumn Joy. Sedum spends the whole summer looking neat and handsome, but fairly quiet, forming tidy blue-green succulent mounds. But watch what happens as fall arrives. The flower heads that have been forming all summer begin an extraordinary color transformation. They open a soft, pale pink, then deepen through rose and dusty rust, and finally settle into a rich, coppery bronze red as the season progresses, an entire autumn's worth of changing color from a single set of blooms without you doing a thing. The bees absolutely swarm it during that pink to rose stage, making it one of the very best late-season pollinator plants there is. Even after a hard frost, the dried flower heads stand handsomely through much of winter, catching frost and snow beautifully, so this plant genuinely gives you fall and winter interest from one single planting. It's remarkably tough and easy, thriving on neglect in full sun and well-drained soil. Too much rich soil or water actually makes it flop, so lean and dry is exactly how it likes to live. For your design, plant it in groups where that slow color transformation can be watched and enjoyed as the season progresses, ideally somewhere visible from a window so you catch the whole show. My tip: if you missed the early summer Chelsea chop pruning trick to keep it compact, don't worry, even a slightly floppy sedum still puts on that gorgeous color show. Just stake it gently if needed, and remember to try that early trim next year for a tidier, sturdier plant. A slow-motion color show all fall long. Sedum Autumn Joy truly earns its name. Now let's add something delicate and orchid-like for the shade with number 5. Number 5 brings elegant, graceful, almost ethereal blooms exactly when the garden needs them most. Japanese anemone. This lovely perennial sends up tall, wiry stems that seem to float above the foliage, topped with simple, saucer-shaped flowers in soft pink or pure white, each with a cluster of golden stamens at the center. They have a delicate, almost wind-swept elegance, swaying gracefully in a fall breeze, and they bloom generously from late summer right through fall, exactly when you want that fresh, cool color against the warmer oranges and golds of the season. Japanese anemone is wonderfully well suited to part shade, making it a beautiful choice for that tricky spot beneath a tree or on the shadier side of the house, where sun-loving fall bloomers like asters and mums would struggle. It prefers rich, consistently moist soil, and once it's happily established, it can slowly spread into a lovely, generous colony over the years. For your design, plant it in a partly shaded bed where its tall, airy stems have room to sway, ideally paired with the bold foliage of hostas or ferns for a gorgeous late-season contrast between summer's greenery and fall's fresh blooms. My tip: Japanese anemone can take a season or two to settle in and really start blooming vigorously, so be patient with a new planting. Once established, it more than makes up for that slow start, spreading gently and rewarding you with more flowers every single year. Elegant, shade-loving, and gracefully in bloom through fall, Japanese anemone brings real sophistication. Now let's add one of the most unusual, orchid-like flowers you've probably never grown, with number 6. Number 6 is a plant so unusual, so intricate, that I think it deserves to be far more popular than it currently is. The toad lily, botanically Tricertis. Now, I promise the name is the least appealing thing about this plant. The flowers themselves are extraordinary. Each small, upward-facing bloom is speckled and spotted with purple, maroon, or pink markings against a paler background, giving it an intricate, almost orchid-like appearance that looks far more exotic and delicate than anything you'd expect from a plant this easy to grow. They bloom along arching stems in late summer and fall, exactly when the shade garden needs a fresh point of interest. This is very specifically a shade plant, thriving in part to full shade and rich, consistently moist soil, the very same cool woodland conditions our hostas and ferns love. It's a wonderful way to extend interest in a shade garden well past the point where hostas and astilbe have finished their season, giving you something genuinely new and different to look at right up close. For your design, plant it where you can appreciate those intricate flowers up close, along a shaded path at the front of a bed, or near a spot you pass by often, since the real beauty of toad lily is in the detail, not in a bold color statement from across the yard. My tip: because the flowers are small and delicately patterned, resist tucking toad lily too far back in a bed where it gets lost among taller plants. Give it a front row spot in the shade garden where visitors can lean in and genuinely marvel at those spotted little blooms. Unusual, intricate, and a genuine conversation piece, toad lily is a shade garden treasure most people have never discovered. Now let's add a true fall specialist that most gardeners have simply never met, with number 7. Number 7 might be the biggest surprise on this entire list, because it flips something you thought you knew about crocuses completely upside down. Autumn crocus, or colchicum. Most of us think of crocuses as one of the very first flowers of spring, poking up through late snow. But colchicum does the exact opposite. It's planted as a bulb in late summer, and then, remarkably, it sends up its large, elegant, goblet-shaped flowers in pale pink, lavender, or white, directly from bare ground in September or October, often with absolutely no leaves in sight at all, since the foliage actually appears separately in spring and dies back well before the flowers arrive in fall. It's a genuinely delightful little garden magic trick, flowers that seem to appear from nowhere right when the rest of the garden is winding down. It's wonderfully easy, needing only well-drained soil and a sunny to partly sunny spot, and once planted, it returns and often multiplies reliably for years, needing essentially no care from you at all. For your design, plant the bulbs in a spot where their surprise fall blooms will be a delightful discovery, near a path, in a lawn edge, or tucked among low ground cover that will hide the bare stems before the flowers appear. My tip: because the leaves emerge in spring and then die back by early summer, before the flowers even show up, mark the spot where you've planted colchicum so you don't accidentally disturb the dormant bulb during summer garden work, wondering what happened to that spring plant that never bloomed. A genuine garden surprise. Autumn crocus blooms when you'd least expect it. Now let's add a charming, whimsically named flower for a moist, shady spot, with number 8. Number 8 has one of the most charming, whimsical names in all of gardening, and the flowers genuinely earn it: Turtlehead or Chalone. Each individual bloom is shaped remarkably like a small turtle's head, with a hinged, snapping appearance, held in dense clusters along upright stems, most commonly in soft pink or pure white. It blooms right through late summer and into fall, adding real charm and a bit of playful personality to a bed exactly when many other flowers are finishing up. Children in particular tend to adore this plant once they learn its name, and actually look closely at the blooms. Turtlehead is a native plant that loves consistently moist to even wet soil, making it a wonderful choice for that damp corner of the yard, near a downspout, or along the edge of a low spot that stays soggy after rain. Much like our cardinal flower from an earlier video, it turns a challenging wet spot into a genuine asset rather than a problem. It tolerates full sun to part shade, and its low maintenance once established in the right moist conditions, returning reliably each year. For your design, plant it in that damp, low spot in your yard, paired beautifully with other moisture-loving plants for a charming, whimsical late-season display right where other flowers might struggle. My tip: like several of our taller fall bloomers, Turtlehead can benefit from an early summer pinch or light trim to encourage a bushier, more compact plant with more flowering stems rather than a few tall, floppy ones. Charming, whimsical, and perfect for a damp spot, Turtlehead brings personality to fall. Now let's add a shrub that blooms exactly backwards from what you'd expect, with number 9. Number 9 brings back a beloved plant we've talked about before, but in a completely different, wonderfully unexpected season: the fall-blooming Camellia, known botanically as Camellia sasanqua. Now, if you remember our earlier video on curb appeal plants, we talked about camellias that bloom in winter and early spring. But sasanqua camellias are a distinct type that do their glorious blooming in fall instead, from October right into December in many climates. They produce the same gorgeous, glossy, deep green evergreen foliage and elegant rose-like blooms in soft pinks, whites, and reds that camellias are famous for. But they give you that luxurious display precisely when the rest of your fall garden is winding down, rather than in the depths of winter. Having both a fall-blooming and a winter-blooming type of camellia in your yard, in fact, can stretch that elegant camellia display across nearly 6 months of the cooler season, with barely a gap between them. It enjoys the same conditions as its winter-blooming cousin: part shade, protection from harsh afternoon sun, and rich, acidic, well-drained soil with a good layer of mulch. For your design, use it as an elegant specimen near the entry or tucked along the side of the house, where its evergreen structure provides beauty all year, and that fall bloom becomes a genuine autumn showstopper. My tip: sasanqua camellias generally tolerate a bit more sun than their winter-blooming relatives, so they're a lovely option if you have a spot that's a touch brighter than true deep shade, but still wants that camellia elegance. Elegant, evergreen, and blooming at exactly the right unexpected time, fall camellia extends your season of luxury. Now, for our 10th and final entry, something a little different to finish. Here it is. And here it is, number 10. And as I promised you, this one isn't a flower at all, but I think it might become one of your favorite fall tricks. Ornamental kale and cabbage. These plants are grown entirely for their extraordinary foliage, which forms tight, ruffled rosettes in the most striking colors: deep purples, soft creams, and vivid pinks, layered and frilled like an enormous, exotic flower, even though it's really just colorful leaves. And here's the wonderful part. Unlike almost every flower on this list, ornamental kale and cabbage actually get more vivid and colorful as the weather cools, with cold snaps and even light frosts intensifying their color rather than damaging it. So right when true flowers are finally giving up to the cold, ornamental kale is just hitting its most spectacular color. It thrives in full sun to part shade and tolerates cold remarkably well, often looking stunning right through the first several frosts and even into early winter and milder climates, giving you color long after nearly everything else has finished for the year. For your design, this is an absolutely wonderful container plant, a stunning centerpiece for a fall porch arrangement paired with mums, pumpkins, and gourds for that classic autumn display, or planted directly into a bed for a bold, colorful edging that holds up beautifully against the cold. My tip: for the most vivid, saturated color, plant it after the weather has already started to cool in early fall, since it colors up best in response to those cooler temperatures. Planted too early in summer heat, it tends to stay a more muted green, cold-loving, ever more colorful, and a true container showstopper. Ornamental kale is the perfect finish to our fall list. Now let's bring it all together. And there you have it, 10 plants that bloom beautifully in fall, from the classic purple of asters and the golden plumes of goldenrod, all the way to that surprising, ever more colorful ornamental kale. Plant even 2 or 3 of these, and your front yard will still be full of genuine color and life, long after your neighbors' gardens have quietly faded into brown. Here's the thought I'd love for you to carry with you. Fall doesn't have to be the end of the gardening year. With the right plants, it can be one more beautiful chapter, its own season of color entirely, rather than just the slow wind down before winter. So tell me down in the comments, what did your front yard look like when I asked you at the very start, still holding on to color or already gone quiet? And which of these 10 are you adding to stretch your season a little further? Share it with your growing zone, and let's make sure your yard stays beautiful right through the very last weeks of the year. And do go say a warm hello to a fellow gardener down there in the comments. This little community keeps growing more wonderful with every season we share together. I've got more lovely ideas coming your way soon, so make sure you're subscribed with that bell turned on so you never miss a video. Until next time, this is Eleanor. Keep your hands in the soil and your heart in the garden. Take care now. Bye-bye.